2026 has already taken more Korean actors than most people realize. Some were legends whose faces defined an entire era of cinema. Some of these names you'll recognize instantly. Others you might be hearing for the very first time. This is 7 Korean actors we lost in 2026. And how quickly, and how unfairly, the world seemed to let them go. 1. Ahn Sung-ki. If any name on this list deserved weeks of tribute, it was his. Ahn Sung-ki wasn't just an actor. In South Korea, people literally called him the nation's actor. He died on January 5, 2026, at 74, after quietly battling blood cancer for years. Think about the scope of this career. He first stepped in front of a camera as a child actor in the late 1950s, and he never really left. Across more than 170 films, he became the face of Korean cinema itself. Silmido, Radio Star, A Fine, Windy Day, Mandala, Nowhere to Hide, Ode to My Father. If you've watched Korean movies from the last 5 decades, you've watched Ahn Sung-ki. You just might not have known his name. He passed at a hospital in Seoul, and his agency asked people to pray for his rest. For a day or two, tributes poured in. Directors, co-stars, an entire industry that had grown up watching him. And then, the algorithm did what it always does. A man who carried Korean film on his shoulders for 70 years got a news cycle measured in hours. He deserved so much more than that. 2. Woo Chang-soo. Not every actor lives on your screen. Some of them live on a stage, in a dark theater, in front of a few hundred people a night. And Woo Chang-soo was one of the best of them. He died on January 16, 2026. He was only 51. If you followed Korean musicals and theater, you knew his work. Productions like Welcome to My World, Face Off, and the play Friends. He was the kind of performer other actors quietly admired. The one who made the hard scenes look effortless. What makes his story hit differently is how he faced the end. He'd first spoken about his health struggles back in 2023, and he kept talking about his treatment with this stubborn, almost gentle optimism. He talked about a comeback. Just 2 weeks before he passed, he posted something so painfully human. A note to himself about eating better, taking care of himself. Get it together, Chang-soo, basically. He was still fighting, still planning to come back. And because stage actors rarely trend the way idols do, most of the world never even heard he was gone. That silence feels wrong for someone who gave audiences so much. 3. Jung Eun-woo. Here's one you almost certainly heard without ever seeing her face. Jung Eun-woo was a voice actress, a Changu, and she passed away on January 16, 2026, at just 40 years old. The cause was cardiac arrest. Sudden, shocking, the kind of news that stops a room. Voice actors are the invisible backbone of so much of what we watch. They breathe life into animation. They dub the foreign films you grew up on. They narrate the ads and the documentaries that live in the background of your day. Jung Eun-woo spent her career being everywhere and nowhere at once. A voice you'd absolutely recognize, attached to a name most people never learned. She was also part of a tight-knit community. Her husband is a respected figure in the Korean voice acting world, which made her loss ripple painfully through the industry that knew her best. And that's the cruel irony. Millions of people had, at some point, heard her. But because her face was never the product, her passing barely registered outside those who worked beside her. She gave her voice to countless characters, and the world let her go almost in silence. 4. Jung-hee. Some careers are so long they feel less like a job and more like living history. Jung-hee debuted as an actress in 1942, and worked on and off for the better part of a century. She died on January 22, 2026, at 84, after her health declined following spinal surgery. Across nearly 300 film and television projects, she did something incredibly rare. She stayed relevant across generations. Older audiences knew her from classic Korean cinema. But younger fans knew her too, because she showed up in A Werewolf Boy and, yes, in the global phenomenon, My Love from the Star. She won a special acting award at the Grand Bell Awards, and she was known for this quiet, grounded emotional depth that made every small role feel important. Think about that reach. She acted for people whose grandparents weren't even born when she started. And when she finally passed, the tributes were warm but brief, a legend reduced to a respectful headline before the feed moved on. 8 decades of work. She helped build the very industry that today's stars stand on. She earned more than a footnote. 5. Jung Eun-woo. This one still feels raw. Jung Eun-woo was only 40 when he passed in February 2026, and his death caught everyone off guard. His family and agency chose not to make the cause public. And out of respect, We're going to leave that exactly where they left it. What we can talk about is his work. If you watched Welcome to Waikiki 2, you saw him. He also appeared in dramas like My Only One, Five Fingers, and Bride of the Sun. And early in his career, he picked up a new star award at the SBS Drama Awards, the kind of recognition that marks someone as one to watch. His final social media post went viral in the days after, not because it was dramatic, but because it suddenly meant something it hadn't meant before. Fans read it and reread it and felt that quiet ache of hindsight. For a moment, he was everywhere. And then, as always, the internet exhaled and moved on. A 40-year-old actor with a whole second act ahead of him, gone, and remembered by most people for about a day. 6. Lee Sang-bo. If you're a K-drama fan, you have absolutely seen Lee Sang-bo. You just might not have caught the name in the credits. He was found dead at his home in late March 2026. He was 44, and at his family's request, the cause was never disclosed. He was what people in the industry lovingly call a scene stealer, a character actor who made every project sharper just by showing up. He debuted back in 2006, and his filmography reads like a tour of modern Korean television. Rugal, Secretly, Greatly, Private Lives, Elegant Empire. He was the reliable one. The actor-directors trusted to walk in and make a supporting role land. And that's exactly why his loss stung in a specific way. He wasn't the headline name, so the headlines were small. His agency confirmed the news, asked for privacy, and held a quiet wake. But think of how many hours of television he lives inside. How many scenes you've watched more than once because of actors like him. 44 is far too young, and being a supporting player shouldn't mean getting a supporting-sized goodbye. 7. Lee Nam-hee. We'll end with someone who, right up until the very end, simply refused to stop performing. Lee Nam-hee passed away on April 22, 2026, at 64, after a long battle with chronic illness. And his story might be the most quietly moving of all. He built a 40-year career that stretched across theater, film, and television. He made his stage debut in 1983 and became one of Korea's most respected theater actors, earning honors like the Jung-hee Theater Award for his powerful performances. On screen, you'd have seen him in The Wailing, in Six Flying Dragons, in Dr. Prisoner, in Conde Intern, always dependable, always fully present. Here's the part that gets me. Even while he was sick, even while his body was failing him, he kept stepping onto the stage. He was still performing in a Seoul theater production until nearly the end, because that's who he was. Acting wasn't a career to him. It was the thing he did until he couldn't anymore. He gave 4 decades to Korean audiences, and he gave his final months to a live stage. That kind of devotion deserves to be remembered far longer than a passing headline. So that's 7. 7 people, 7 whole lives, spread across almost a century of Korean film, television, theater, and voice work. A national legend, a beloved character actor, a voice you'd know instantly, a stage performer who never gave up. And what did they all have in common in 2026? For a moment, we noticed. And then, so quickly, we didn't. I'm not saying that to make anyone feel guilty. This is just how the internet works now. It's built to move fast, to refresh, to forget. But maybe that's exactly why it matters to stop every once in a while and actually say these names out loud. So if one of them meant something to you, if you grew up on their films, or you recognize their face halfway through this video, drop their name in the comments. Tell me which drama, which movie, which role. Let's make this the one corner of the internet where they get remembered for a little longer than a day. Thank you for watching, and thank you for slowing down with me.